Used to Sew, a podcast about sewing machines, sewing history, and sewing culture in the past and present. I am your producer and co-host, Aradia, daughter of your main host, T.R. Kelly, who is here today to talk to you about electricity, specifically rural electrification. This is our first two-part episode, where this week we will talk about rural electrification in general, and next week is about how that affected sewing machines in particular. This episode is all about putting rural electrification in context. Much like our modern digital divide between urban and rural locations, electricity access itself was a similarly distributed economy 100-ish years ago. The effort required to make electricity available to rural locations was massive, and in many places didn't succeed until much more recently than 100 years ago. TR will be reading to you from a few sources that will be included in the show notes, covering topics like the Rural Electrification Administration and their star, Louisa Mamer, artful toaster design, fire hazard wiring, and ironing technology. I hope you enjoy pondering the question of what is an appliance as much as we do. On to the show.
Today, my first thing I'd like to say is, I don't want to say thoughts and prayers. I want to say, holy shit to the people who just went through that hurricane and still don't have power. Electricity is one of those things that we take for granted nowadays, here in the United States especially, most areas, but it hasn't always been like that. Rural electrification is less than 100 years old. In fact, a house that I recently owned here in the neighborhood was built before electricity was available there. And, wow, when electricity came, oh boy, power from the people. Well, let me just tell you, I'm going to be presenting a few things from really well-researched sources, so I just don't have to make shit up, because I'm too good at that, and I don't want to give you guys the wrong ideas. This is from the National Museum of American History. Yeah, baby, the Smithsonian. Okay, here it goes. Imagine your daily life without electricity. Cooking, heating, clothes irons on wood stoves, pumping water by hand, reading and working under kerosene lamps. Many people in rural America lived that life until well into the 20th century. For those of you that can't add, that means like the 19 whatevers, right? And even at then, most only received electricity by choosing to work together with their neighbors and participate in electrical cooperatives, or co-ops for short. First of all, though, Edison and Westinghouse and other inventors began producing practical electrical power systems in the 1880s. This is the beginning of what we call the Gilded Age.
Yes, the era when anything is possible. Science and spiritualism are very blurry. We don't, because there's invisible forces that you can manipulate at this point. Electricity. Yes. Why not spirits? Why not ghosts?
Absolutely. It's the electrical nature of the universe is being starting to be understood. Radio hadn't really been invented yet, but we were fully into the age of the telegraph, right? Sending over the wires. So electricity is like, oh, what else can we do with this cool thing that okay? So by the 1920s, back to the article here, most cities and towns in the United States received electricity from either privately owned or municipal, meaning city or county, utility companies. Running wires into the countryside, where there might only be a few people per square mile, seemed uneconomical for investors or taxpayers. So nobody wanted to pay for getting the electricity out of the cities and towns.
Right, there's a lot of miles just for a couple people here, a couple people there. And what are they even going to use it for? Exactly.
What are they going to use? They don't even know, what. But, okay, modernness, 1880 to 1920.
Gilding our age.
We just did 40 years there where electricity in the cities is a thing. It's pretty common. Because of cost, not out in the country. So by 1932, we're into the Depression now. Only 10% of rural America was electrified, and most of that was by home light, what we call light plants, which is basically a fuel engine, internal combustion engine, turning a generator, feeding a battery bank. Farmers were off-grid. They didn't call it that back then. They had and the most common manufacturer was Delco. So I have a Delco plant. I have a Delco light plant. And the Delco light plant, you'd go out and you'd run that engine for, I don't remember how many number of hours, and that would charge your battery bank, which was huge. But it was like lead calcium 2-volt cells or something. Some nerd correct me on this, but what kind of a Delco light? Okay, what was the output? 32 volts. What does it have to do with sewing machines? If you have an old sewing machine, the motor has various little brass screws that you can change around so that your motor will operate on a Delco light plant. 32 volts DC. Now, I've got 12 volt and 48 volt systems, and I have not tried a 32, but that's one of my goals for this year, is to change one of my old Singer BT motors from the 1920s over to that voltage and have my son build a battery that will run that, so I can
have a solar-powered electric sewing machine experience.
So even if you were out in the country and you wanted to get the little farm wife one of those newfangled electric sewing machine motors, now she's been sewing on a treadle since
forever.
1872, right?
Sure.
But this is the little standalone electric motors are becoming available. What can you put a motor on, right?
The motorization of gadgets.
Yes. What can be motorized? Well, the first thing on a farm that people motorized with their Delco light plant was the well pump.
Sure, that makes total sense. Obvious labor-saving device.
Oh, yeah. The second thing, they really, really, really wanted lights, fans, and radio. When radio was invented, which was in the 20s when people started getting radios.
All right, connection to the outside world.
Oh, my gosh. But lights, oh, my gosh.
Being able to see after dark.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Think of in the winter, your house is closed. The only light you have is little flames. Can you think about what the air quality was like? Why
that
so
seems
many
bad.
people, if you ever read the classic children's book Heidi, there's a little girl in there who's sickly and she has bright red cheeks and she lives in a closed up house in the city where they have, what do they have? Gas lamps. That girl had ongoing CO2 poisoning.
Right, and getting out into the country instantly improves
Goes out to
because
visit her cousin in the country, and all of a sudden she's the picture of health again because they're rumping around in the oxygen.
And it takes all of 10 minutes for your blood to start recovering. Yeah.
So for electricity to be light, oh my gosh.
Non-toxic light.
Yeah.
Now, we used to need such a thing. That used to be a need we had.
Absolutely.
Light that doesn't poison you.
The history of lighting is pretty interesting, too. It starts with things like rush lights, which is pieces of reeds stuck into animal fat or olive oil, little tiny personal lights you can carry around.
Right.
So what do we want? We want lights. When do we want them? Right now.
Right.
Some of the early posters for the REA show a light bulb, and then in the far distance is a farmhouse, and it says, coming soon. They had to sell the communities on, hey, will you guys all band together and pledge this amount of work? Okay, so we're getting ahead of myself here. Okay, so by 1932, only 10% of rural America was electrified. They had to do it themselves with the light plant out in the garage, 32-volt light bulbs, 32-volt, all these things. But it was only for that farm and only a certain amount of power per day, which went to lights and the well pump and things like the sewing machine and the electric fan. Electric fan was really an important thing. This is way before air conditioning.
Right, to keep people from absolutely dying in the summer.
Especially in the summer when you have to cook. How do you cook? You cook on wood. You have to heat up your house.
Oh, that sucks.
Right? Okay, so this electrical divide between the people in the city that had municipal power and the people in the country that if they had any, they had to make it themselves. This divide fueled the differences in standards of living between city and farm, hampering rural Americans' ability to participate in the life of their modernizing country. What does this remind you of today?
Access to the internet?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
having a shitty connection that goes in and out constantly and doesn't allow you to have video calls because everyone needs Zoom now, and you gotta be able to download giant files, and if you can't do that, then yeah.
So the basic availability of electricity was the first, quote, digital divide, as far as like the technology.
The electric divide.
Yeah. So do we get electricity? How are we going to get electricity? Now remember, we just hit the Depression. 1929, the stock market crashed. We're at 1932 here, and President Roosevelt is the guy now, and he's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. And he starts establishing all these agencies to take care of the problems. Well, one that we're concerned with right now is the REA, the Rural Electrification Administration. Rather than simply build the power systems, the REA made loans to electric cooperatives that were to be repaid over 30 years. Now, what does that mean? That means the government is going to loan this group of farmers this much money to build their electrical system, run it as a co-op. It's not a private for-profit thing. When their loan is paid off, then they own it. They can do whatever they want. Now, you out here, Aradia, are on electric co-op.
Right, yeah. I'm just like, so those co-ops still exist then.
That's when this one came into existence. Over at Leisureland, we were on Public Utility District, which I believe started as a co-op.
Sure.
Because for our listeners, we are very rural out here.
Oh, yeah.
It is a long way to the nearest stoplight, let alone a McDonald's or a Walmart or a fabric store. Truly. So actually, electricity only came to this area in the 1950s. Yeah. Oh, boy. So here you are, guys. We're going to loan you. The government is going to bring you this money, but you have to work together. Okay, so how did they do that? They all learn how to stick wires in the trees. That's a technical part we don't need to know about. The groups got together. They made a co-op. They said they were all going to support it. They were going to help. The way that was built is a story for another podcast. Here's what we're interested in. Having electricity is one thing. Knowing how to use it is another.
Yeah, I will refer to one of my favorite examples of this in art, which is the opening sequence in Downton Abbey. The very first sequence in the very first episode of the very first season, they're talking about the electrification of the manor, and the lowest ranked kitchen girl who's been doing all kinds of labor and who you will see doing all kinds of labor with lighting fires and clearing out fires and washing clothes and all kinds of things that electricity does.
Yes.
At one point, she turns around in this discussion the other maids are having about electricity coming to the manor, and she says, well, what's it for? You've been watching her do all the things that electricity will replace. And it's like, girl, it's going to do what you've been doing.
Oh,
that's what it's for.
That is the thing.
Editing Aradia, popping in here. I just have to correct myself. I rewatched the opening scene of Downton Abbey to make sure my recollection was correct. And I was slightly overemphasizing the point. What actually happens is, first, the character Daisy, knocks on a door, so that's an alarm clock. Then she confirms that her fire from last night is still lit, so an electric stove. Then she confirms that she laid out the service for breakfast, which there's no analogy for, and finished blacking the stove, also no analogy, and that she has yet to lay the fires in some of the main house rooms, electric heat. So, not some of what I was saying, but not exactly. If you watch the whole show, it is easy to see how much she does that can be replaced by electricity, but this specific scene was perhaps less all-inclusive than I said. Okay, anyway, back to the episode.
To help people learn the new technology, we don't know what they did in England. I'm curious. The REA hired advisors like the very famous nowadays, for nerds, you all know her name, Louisa Mamer from Southern Illinois. For decades, Mamer and her colleagues traveled around the country staging what they referred to as an electric circus. They taught people who had never used electricity how to operate and maintain equipment, cook, and do household chores with electricity and use it safely. Having grown up on a farm, Maimer understood firsthand how difficult rural life could be and how people might feel pressure to abandon farming, right?
Oh, yeah. I can see why you'd want to leave.
There's an old song says, how are you going to keep them down on the farm once they've seen Paris?
Sure.
I think it's a World War I song, I think.
Yeah.
And especially since World War I has happened, and a lot of these farm boys have been through cities and they've encountered electricity. Like, oh my God. Returning World War I veterans were very excited to participate in this co-op because they knew what electricity could do.
They had seen the heights with which you could go to.
Yeah. Ms. Maimer graduated from University of Illinois College of Agriculture, taught home ec, and began writing about the topics. Joining REA soon after the agency's establishment, she traveled not only as a home electrification specialist, that's in capitals, kids, but also wrote training documents and vetted the program materials for people to use to teach people how to use electricity. A lot of her paper files have been collected. World War II interrupted the work of the REA of getting electricity to everybody.
Really? They were midway through the process and then all those resources had to get diverted.
It interrupted the work. It didn't stop the program. It just interrupted the work. We needed to devote everything to the war effort. When Roosevelt signed the Rural Electrification Bill in September 1944, he said, from the point of view of raising the living standard of rural America and providing a more efficient form of farm management, one of the most important projects interrupted by the war was the extension of rural electrification. So the president himself said, damn, we're really going on this. We got to go bomb somebody, whatever about that. President Roosevelt went on to explain that participation in rural electrification must be wide, not limited to areas with greater resources. It's particularly important that extensions of rural electrification be planned in such a way to give, he goes on to say lots of blah, meow, but basically he wants to, rural electrification should bring modern service of electric power to farm families in the backcountry.
The poorest, the least,
everybody
the most widely
needs
distributed.
Electricity. Yeah, the president says, we need electricity. Yeah, I need to ask my mom
what her experience of that was.
Yeah. Now, a lot of times they didn't have electricity because they couldn't pay for it. But not that it wasn't available.
Yeah, no, that would be a good... We could interview her. She would love to get to be on the podcast.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about Ms. Maimer and the thing a little bit more about what the show actually was and how she actually did stuff. The page we're on right now is Rural Electric Magazine, cooperative.com. The author of this piece is Frank Gallant, published March 4th, 2019. And we're talking again about Louisa Maimer, who worked for the Rural Electrification Administration back to the 1930s, the dirty 30s. Before World War II, few rural women were familiar with electric appliances. I'm even talking light bulbs, okay? Rural country people are still using wood stoves to cook on, to heat with, to lighting with kerosene. The Rural Electrification Administration had to do something about the fact that nobody knew how to use electricity, because if they didn't use electricity, the rural co-ops wouldn't be able to pay back their loans. They have to make money. Okay, we lent you this money to build the system. Now you got to make it pay the loan back.
Sure.
So how do you sell people something they don't know they need?
Right, you have to educate them on the need, which is kind of sleazy in some regards, but also legit in this regard. I mean, it's new technology.
This is kind of like the sewing machine. It's going to make a lot of people's lives really easier right away in the short term. Then what? So let's talk about Louise Maimer. She hit the road with the REA Farm Equipment Show, which boosted 2 big top tents and soon became known as the Electric Circus. The show made 22 stops in Iowa and Nebraska between October and December 1938, and over the next 3 years visited 26 other states. That means my grandma could have watched that.
Oh.
Any of my great aunts, they might have.
Yeah.
My mom was born in 1938, and all the relatives are right there, right?
Yeah, totally.
So, in a 1975 interview, she described a typical stop. We'd move into a town over the weekend, set up the tents. That night we would have the home electrification specialist, which was my job, she says, demonstrate lighting equipment. Now there's a picture of here with a bunch of switches and a bunch of different size light bulbs. So I can...
She was like the lighting department at Harry's.
So she's showing people what a switch is.
Uh-huh.
You never
How to
seen a
use
switch.
it. Right.
What is a switch for? It's for electricity.
Mm-hmm.
What is a switch? Is it like a faucet? No. And old switches, pull chains were kind of early. There's several types of early switches.
Yeah, totally.
How to operate a switch. What is a light bulb? People would try to blow them out.
Right. What are the operating parameters?
Exactly. So that was her job, was to teach people in a non-condescending way about the new thing and how it would benefit them. Because you can sell anybody anything. You don't sell them a thing. You sell them a benefit.
Right, yeah, totally. And there's a lot of benefits to electricity. It basically sells itself once you get over the learning curve.
Just like surgers.
Yeah, totally.
Because that's what I learned at Singer, back to sewing machines, is that you're not selling a machine, you're selling a benefit. You're selling Mrs. Customer creativity or free time or lack of frustration. You're not selling her a piece of metal. Okay, so what she's selling these people, you need to know how to use it, but she's also selling them modernity, urban sophistication. We have electricity now, right?
The pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is currently working. Observe the bootstraps manifesting and pulling up. Isn't this neat?
Yeah, so she's got this little board with all these different sizes of light bulbs and signs that talk about watts, and there's little diagrams on the wall. So she's explaining what a light bulb is and how it works and what a watt is. Okay, so that's nighttime, the lighting demonstration. Of course, it's dark. The next morning, she says, we'd have a laundry equipment demonstration at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And in the afternoon, we would demonstrate small appliances. Now, I'm going to bet the sewing machine was in there. Even if it was an old treadle that had a motor bolted to it, which was probably the most likely scenario. But that was the way to do it until 1920. We're coming up to that part. And then later in the evening, there would be an electric cooking duel between two of the men.
Ooh.
That was the highlight of the whole program.
It all built up to like a barbecue off, basically?
They had to cook. There was a whole meal that they had to cook in the electric stove.
Wow.
The REA Electric Circus was discontinued in November 1941, a week before Pearl Harbor, because with the U.S. readying for war, the REA couldn't justify the gasoline needed to keep the trucks on the road. At that point, Mamer and her colleagues had demonstrated for nearly 1 million rural people.
Wow, that's a lot of America.
We're talking rural people,
that's
not
a lot of America.
Cities, right?
It's a lot of rural America.
I mean, my family's from in that era. Like I said, my mom was born in Southwest Iowa in 1938. It is very possible that some of my older female relatives went to one of these shows.
It almost seems more unlikely that none of them did.
Yeah.
Right? With 1 million people in that area, in that demographic, the odds that none of your relatives experienced that seems pretty low.
Now,
One of them had to have.
I don't know for sure, but I think she probably didn't go to the really, really sparsely populated plains states, because I do know that areas of southeast Oregon didn't get electricity until the 70s.
Well, sure.
Right?
Sure, yeah.
I think she was concentrating on farm families, which are Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, the whole middle, east of the 100th meridian. So I do want to ask my mom if she ever saw anything like that. But her family was kind of hill people and might not have been into that newfangled electricity.
Still might have been exposed to the demonstration, though. Just
they
out
might
of
have
sheer
been.
curiosity.
And probably, I wonder, they might have even went to things like county fairs and stuff. Because I do know that Singer and the sewing machine people did. Okay, so after she went around and demonstrated all this stuff and showed it to people, the rural electric managers and project superintendents were ecstatic. Memberships in the co-ops grew. People wanted to be part of it. Appliance sales, oh boy, now there's a market for all these things people are inventing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Kilowatt hour sales of electricity grew. Now, along with the sewing machine, there were other appliances being, quote, invented. I mean, there were things that had never existed before electricity. Oh, let me try to think. Well, a light bulb. I mean, okay, it's replacing a candle or a kerosene lamp. Toasters. A lot of people are really into toasters. Now, there were ways to toast bread on a fire.
Oh, yeah.
But some of the beautiful toaster designs from the 1920s, and they're art. They are really art. You know, be careful if you're going to plug one in. Speaking of plugging things in, plugging in, what do you plug into?
The house was not built with wiring in the walls.
The REA would come around to your house. Here you are, Joe and Jane Farmer, out in Pottawatomie County, southwest Iowa. Honey, the REA's coming to bring some electricity. And pretty soon, all your guys at the Grange are talking, oh, yeah, the electricity's coming and da-da-da-da. And are you going to get your house wired? Well, what do you mean? Well, the REA would send around a team of trained guys, and they would sell you the wiring package, and it was not like profit sale. It's like you're buying it from the co-op.
Right.
Very under what you would have to pay. And you got lighting for 6 rooms. Now, this is, some of you that maybe are in old houses or have ever lived in an old house, you've got a beautiful medallion in the center of the ceiling and a wire that hangs down. It's twisted 2 wires of cloth, and it ends in a metal socket with a turnkey switch and a big old fat light bulb hanging on the bottom. There's no shade. It's a wire with a light bulb, a socket.
That's not much.
And it's really heavy wire, and it's hanging down, and it's just this really utilitarian thing, right? So your REA package includes 6 rooms with light and a circuit for a refrigerator. Now, this was something, this was one of the other things that women were like, oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And an electric range.
Yeah.
Remember how cooking in the house heats it up, and you've got to build a hot fire, not to mention smoke, wood fumes, bringing the fuel in and out, getting the fuel? Electric range, electric refrigerator, lights. And out in the barn, you would have a light circuit and usually one for a milking machine for some farms. So there would be wiring in the barn.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's your basic thing. There aren't any appliances yet. There are light bulbs.
They're not plugs. It's just bulbs.
There are bulbs. And there are electric motors. Because this is pretty much in the barn. You're going to get a motor and you can hook things up to it with a belt.
Right, so the wire just goes right to the motor and then you...
Yeah, you hook the motor with a belt up to your corn grinder. All these things that you used to use manually, you or your horse, now you hook it up to the motor. And it just goes. And it's not crapping all over your legs while it's doing it. Right? So there's the standard electric package wires your farmhouse and your barn. And you get a security light. You get a big pole in your front yard with a light on it.
And the beginning of light pollution in the dark places. Cities, you expect to have light pollution, but this is the beginning of rural light pollution.
Very excited about it. And I have lived in so many old houses where that light is still there.
God damn.
Still there. You know, it's like the weird old mercury vapor. They cast this weird purple shadow, you know. It's like, oh my gosh. So there you go. Okay, so we've got our houses wired, and then flashbacks. The day the lights came on. The electricity's coming. They said so. Yes, I'm going to order the package from my farmhouse. What do you think, Jane? Whatever you think, John. Okay, we're wired. So everything's in place. They've trusted the co-op that it's going to come on. The bulbs are hanging.
This could all be an elaborate scam at this point.
They don't know.
Yeah.
There's been so many scams in American history. This is this
is an era of scams at their peak.
Well, this is when the Depression era and Roosevelt sort of taking over everything, being a friendly dictator and creating all these make work agencies that also made things safer. Teddy Roosevelt before. There was a lot of regulation going on, but people didn't expect it was going to be good. They just didn't. Somebody's scamming me. And a lot of farmers didn't want to sign up because they couldn't be convinced that they weren't signing over the rights to their farm.
There's some sort of tricky giving it up to the government because now their property is on the property. Yes, the government
needs an easement across my farm for their wires. Why do I don't want that. That the government, because a lot of, still, as today, as always, the rural people don't trust the government.
That's never been a state of affairs ever.
That's beyond any politics. It's just the city-rural divide. And, this is part of it early on.
Yeah.
The technology always gets going in the city faster. They blame the country people for being slow. Well, I had a neighbor that was still using dial-up internet 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Out here.
Yeah. I know the one.
So, oh my gosh, well... I seen Joe Bob and his crew, because they would have all the farm boys working the crew under the direction of an experienced wireman, they called him. Well, then came the day that the lights came on. And if you ask people of a certain age where they were, they'll always remember. Mm-hmm. They'd be sitting at home and all of a sudden, they would glow. Oh, the bulbs! And they didn't have any shades on them. People wanted to stare at them. They didn't want to...
I wonder how many people hurt their eyes just staring at those things.
These weren't frosted. These were the kind that you see the film in, right? And they're staring at these bulbs, and it's just such a wondrous thing.
It's kind of an act of God. I mean, it's what did you just put lightning in a jar on command?
Oh, and a lot of farmers were very afraid because they didn't know, like electricity, it's the same as lightning. Mm-hmm. So in the electric circus... Louisa and her people would go educate the wives on the domestic use, and they would have male demonstrators go in the barn and talk to the farmers about grounding and electricity, electric safety. Safety was a big part because electricity was so new, they didn't want to make a bad name.
Sure, and people like Edison electrocuting elephants for show was not helping any of
the war of the currents is like the sewing machine war, only worse.
Highly recommend the movie Current War.
Yeah.
It's really a delightful movie.
Yeah.
And really depicts Edison in a bad light, but sympathetic. And you really, I know it's just a movie, but it really gives you that sense of like, this guy created a lot of friction just for his ego that didn't need to be in the system for the sake of like all of us. Like he put friction there that we didn't need.
Yeah.
Right? Like Westinghouse and Tesla were not creating friction, and Edison created enough friction for both of them.
He's kind of like Isaac Singer that way.
I kind of, maybe we should do a point-for-point comparison.
Yeah, one of our future episodes, I researched all the actual nuts and bolts and names and dates of who invented the sewing machine. But the parallels of the electric wars and the sewing machine wars are quite... It was that age of invention, the industrial thing.
Yeah, men in vests yelling at each other through bushy mustaches.
With monocles and
they were very dapper while doing dastardly things, Yeah.
So here's the electricity in the house. Poof, all the lights come on. A lot of people at first didn't know how to turn them off.
Sure. How am I going to sleep?
Well, yeah, they just didn't know, or they forgot what they saw.
And that's where the switch lecture was supposed to come into play.
Right, because each lamp, early on, there was no such thing as a wall switch. Every switch was in the wire. It was the end of the wire, a big brass thing with a turnkey switch, and the bulb went in the end. Now, it was big burly wires. The houses had 100 amp service, I think. Maybe it was only 50. And what was this hooked to? All the wires, your 6 lights, your refrigerator, your pump, all this stuff went into a fuse box with fuses, not breakers, fuses, big glass things. You don't have any fuses, you stick a penny behind it. Boop, you just created a short circuit. Now your farmhouse is going to burn down. Learning how to be safe with electricity was kind of... Farmhouses burnt down.
Yeah, well, but it makes sense that they were thinking about that because their sources before were literally fire.
Yeah.
So farmhouses were burning down already. So it makes sense that they were like, is this going to give me more or less burning down hazard?
Right.
But burning down was an active problem already.
But you can see fire.
You can see fire.
How does electricity, that it's smoldering in the walls? Okay, the wiring at the time, and a lot of you with older houses might recognize the term knob and tube wiring. It's the conductors, which is the metal part of the wire, are wrapped in fabric, and those get drilled and poked through the joists in your house, and the holes are lined with these ceramic tubes, and the wire gets wrapped around these knobs, and it's a very elegant system. The wires just sort of stand out there like clotheslines. If you go down in the basement of one of these old houses, you'll see these things.
Yeah. I've definitely seen this.
Those, right?
And that 1910 sort of quintessential Pacific Northwest house.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And most of those, if they're rural farmhouses, might have been REA. A lot of our houses here in the Pacific Northwest were tapped into whatever the local mill. The local mill, steam-driven mill, produced electricity for the mill. Well, and a lot of houses, so that's another 32-volt source, or another different voltage source. That old sewing machines, the motors will say this many volts, and there was more than 32 DC. A lot of mill towns, not only here in the Northwest, but in coal country. Any place where steam machinery was being used, excess steam power often created electricity, which was a benefit for the town. So a lot of little isolated towns had electricity, but it wasn't REA. REA was mostly a farm belt thing, not out here on the West at all. I don't know any REA out here on the West. Doesn't mean there isn't any, but I don't know of it. It was more of a Midwest thing.
Some nerd correct us.
So please tell us more about electricity on the West Coast that wasn't related to, mills, sawmills. And even in Eugene, clear up until I think the 80s or 90s, downtown was powered by steam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Corvallis has the same round patches for sawdust to get put into the basement.
Yes, into the basement. The well hall used to have a sawdust burner.
I saw that exact same infrastructure up in Corvallis when I was there. I've seen it in Portland. Yeah, it's totally a thing.
So here's Ma now. She's in her parlor with the old electric light blazing overhead. Isn't that great? Hey, I can catch up on my sewing. She wheels out the old sewing machine, the treadle, right? She can really see now. This is great. Wow. Somebody at some point says, hey, let's put a motor on that sewing machine. Now, sewing machines have been around 70 years already without electricity. Mrs. Farm Wife, let's say, and all the lights have come on. Every room has a beautiful glowing globe of Edison goodness. And, my God, she can see the seams, the stitches. She can sew after dark.
Yeah. Now, she's not going to strain her eyes.
If you've ever tried to sew by lamplight.
Oh, it's flickery. The constantly changing angle of the light is oof.
You wind up you just can't. It really can't be done. So the invention of different, more efficient types of kerosene lights helped out, but electricity wipes all that. So here's the farm wife. In the sewing machine was usually in the parlor. In a house that was going to get electricity. Your average working class or middle class house, going to get electricity. There's a parlor, and that's usually where the sewing machine is. And that's why they were pretty, because they were parlor furniture. The light's on. I'm sewing. I can see what I'm sewing now. It's time to press the seam.
Ah, yes. Pressing.
Back to the irons. Now, okay, well, why do you even need to iron? What is that? Okay, remember we talked about natural fabrics. Why, so why do people have irons in the first place? Well, one reason is smoothing, but another reason we don't think of is body lice.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because you don't have dryers. Right? There's no electric dryer.
No, and sunshine kills all kinds of bacterial things. But if you've got lice eggs or whatever, I mean, these things are sticky. They hang on in your clothes. Let's not judge our ancestors for stuff they had to deal with that we don't.
I'm just glad I don't have to live then. That's all.
Oh, but irons were used as early as 1st century BC in China.
Sure.
And it was an iron box which could be filled with hot coals. And despite the risk of fire, liquid fuel irons were sold in rural areas of the USA clear up through World War II.
No, thank you.
In India, they use burning coconut shells in the tin box.
Makes sense.
But smoothing fabric, you've washed it. It's crunchy. It's part of looking good. If you're going to have beautiful clothes and you've sewn things, so they were usually called smoothing irons. Sad iron comes from Middle English sad, which means solid. They weren't a cube that you put hot things into. They were a solid slab of metal that you heated on a fire or a stove. This is the kind I've used.
That's the kind I've used.
Stove. Yeah.
I actually have a set in my closet now that I could use in theory.
Wait, you still have those?
I believe so.
Oh, I want to try them out with my solar thing.
Yeah, totally.
I want to do solar ironing.
I'm pretty sure that they're still in my closet.
But I need a sad iron to do it, right? Because you're heating this slab of iron. They're doing it on a wood stove or coal stove or whatever back then. A laundry worker or a housewife employing these irons would employ many. You can even see stoves from this time, and they have a rail where you can set all your irons. They're little small sewing laundry room stoves. You have 5 going, and you iron with one until it's cool, and then you put it back on the rack and pick up the next one. Okay, so as the iron in use curled down, it'd be replaced by a hot one. Okay, so here we are, Mrs. Housewife. She's trying to iron in her sewing. Oh, hell no, I ain't firing up that wood stove. Electric irons. The invention of the electric iron was 1882. Remember, we talked about electricity was available in cities pretty much by then. Some of the earlier ones were too dangerous to be successful. The early electric irons had no way to control the temperature, so it was hooked up to the electricity until...
Oh, it was hot or not.
Yeah! And the first one with a control on it was 1920.
Okay,
so we're not going... But remember back... Electricity, okay? Like, the Depression hasn't happened yet. Rural electrification hasn't happened yet. 1920, okay, we already have that, but the farm wives are still using the I burned myself irons. Early electric irons. This was fun. Charcoal-filled irons are still popular today in many less electrified part of the world. So that would be what you would use in the summertime.
Because it's a lot less heat momentum to build a little fire than to heat up a solid brick of iron.
Yeah, in the winter when you got that wood stove going anyway, you're baking bread, you're heating iron. Some of those big old stoves have a spot for all this stuff.
Right,
Rising your bread, baking it. Put the irons on this part here. But in the summer, having one that your charcoal's outside, you go out, you put some coals in,
That makes sense.
There were even, during the age of gas lighting, people experimented with gas irons.
I mean, why not?
This was dangerous.
I can see why that was a short-lived experiment.
There's a picture of a lady using one. This was a very short eco development, yeah. The early 20th century enthusiasm was building for the new electric smoothing irons. Clean, powerful, adjustable, labor-saving. They didn't make you roasting hot. They didn't carry soot or ash. See, here's another thing. If you're heating your iron on something with fire, there's a chance there's going to be something dirty on that that's going to get on your fabric, right?
Which would suck.
So the hot point iron, they still make irons, was launched in 1905, was the first electric iron to have any commercial success. Now, here we get back to the story of electricity. By the 1920s, enough people had homes wired for electricity for electric clothes irons to become a thing. So now in the city, she's got light, and she's got an electric clothes iron, which she can use in her sewing machine. How does she plug it in? Well, she doesn't want to lose the light. There's all kinds of electric doodads, they're called socket doublers, that you could invent. So you could plug 2 things into your light bulb socket.
It's just a splitter.
So you've got a light bulb on one side, and you've got this screw-in plug thing with the twisted wires coming out. That's your iron. Now, remember, people don't know about electricity so much, like watts and amps and resistance.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that.
And so the iron is okay. It's one heat-producing appliance. Your knob and tube wiring is run through those ceramic things so that it can heat up, and it's okay. They know that wire gets hot. They know this about electricity. If you look at knob and tube wire, it runs parallel. It's not even next to each other. It goes through all this fireproof stuff. Safe. Until you mess with it. Oh, I'm going to add another circuit. I'm going to scrape the insulation off here. People start adding circuits to their own wiring because they don't want to pay anybody.
I'm a homeowner. It's all good.
There's all kinds of electric accidents. Irons, because at this time here, because they're A, hot, and B, electric, are a hazardous thing. Okay, by the 1930s, we're right before the REA here. By the 1930s, the iron's only rival for most popular electrical home appliance was the radio.
Ah, now we're getting into entertainment appliances. Entertainment's really broad.
Light bulbs were not considered appliances. They were separate.
Sure.
Iron was an appliance. A toaster was an appliance. A waffle iron. Some people argue about if a sewing machine is or not because it existed before electric appliances. It's not an appliance.
But it fulfills the same kind of function as an appliance.
Some people think appliances means electric.
I mean, I use my food processor as a cheese grater. But does that make my cheese grater an appliance?
Exactly. Or your wheat grinder, your hand grinder. Is that an appliance or is that just a farm tool? So appliance usually defaults to electric, but sewing machines usually get left out.
Sure, but at the same time, most of my machining experience, my whole life has been electric, which would be an appliance.
But you don't think of it as an appliance, right?
Well, I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
I do too, because it was
That's probably why I do, is because you do.
The history of the sewing machine, as we'll get to, who invented the sewing machine. It was the first complicated machine in the home that women were expected to operate. So in a way, it predates washing machines or anything else. The first machine for women, the sewing machine. The grain grinder, no, because people didn't grind grain at home.
Right,
it was done by the miller.
Communal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get back to irons. Irons, only radios were better. And if you watch old movies, the housewife ironing and listening to the radio.
Yeah, it was just as you're saying that, it was like, that picture that goes right up through like the 1950s, 60s.
Yes, my mom.
Is the radio while doing the ironing before, and then TVs.
My mom, I remember watching TV. She'd be watching soap operas on a little tiny black and white TV. We have an ironing board here, people. We have an ironing board sitting right next to us. This is what it sounds like. And it's low down. And my mom would iron at a low-down ironing board, and I remember the basket of clothes, the iron, the ashtray, and these are the days of our lives. Do-do-do-do. The little, theme song thing. Tracy, sprinkle those clothes for me. Sprinkle the clothes. There's this little cork top thing with a shower head on it that you'd put on a pop bottle, because Mom didn't have a steam iron. That was fancy. Right? Just a plain iron.
Yeah.
Steam iron that didn't happen yet.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think other people had them, but we didn't at my house. We did not. We read about steam irons. One more thing. I don't want to talk more about steam irons. I want to talk about most vintage irons. Now we're talking back to electricity and how do they plug them in. They plugged them into a splitter with the ceiling lamp. And the electricity system was not overloaded yet. Because even then, an iron is a high wattage. Anything that produces heat draws a lot of electricity.
Right.
But your REA system is still fairly new. You haven't spliced into it. You haven't plugged too many things into it.
Hair dryers haven't been invented yet.
Curling irons were, though. Curling irons came really quick. An iron for your hair, and they plugged in the same way.
I remember that from that movie about the woman that did she was like one of the first black entrepreneurs in the Gilded Age. And she had a hair business.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember the hot comb.
Yes.
It was like a big part of that plot. And I can never remember the name of this movie. I'll look it up for the show notes. But that was a big part of that, was using the hot comb and the cream and all of that.
Yeah, my grandpa had to have that. He had real kinky hair. But yeah, that was the thing. If you had kinky hair, you wanted to flatten it out. And like the flappers of the era wanted the waves. They wanted those little curls in their hair.
Oh, yeah, the sculpted.
You're right.
Yeah.
So there was this curling irons. The first curling irons were in the 1920s.
Jeez.
So that first home care appliance. Even before electric razors or anything, the curling iron. Again, so iron, smoothing things out, heating things up.
Manipulating natural fibers, including human hair.
That's exactly what irons are for, is breaking the thermostatic bonds of fabric and getting it to lay flat. So yeah, here's Mrs. Farmwife Sewing Room. She's got her electric light bulb, and she's got her electric iron. Stay tuned for the next episode when we tell you about her electric sewing machine. Ooh. All right. This has been Used to Sew, and stay threaded. Stay tuned. Keep your tension just right.
And there you have it. Another series of semi-organized tangents around rural electrification in the 20th century, which wandered through off-grid power systems, safe versus dangerous lighting sources, the day the lights came on, and multiple movie or TV references that I explained to my mom. Also, my first mid-show correction. Fans of my other podcasts may already be familiar with editing Aradia occasionally showing up. It doesn't happen often through the magic of editing, but sometimes it's necessary. Did you agree with our discussion about what defines an appliance? Sound off in our Patreon or on our social media. Next week, we will continue on this topic, diving into how rural electrification affected sewing machines specifically, including ripple effects into our own family history. As a reminder, we are unofficially sponsored by Stagecoach Road Vintage Sewing Machine, who do repairs and restorations. You can follow us and them on Facebook and Instagram, and you can support us by sharing the podcast with your friends and also with money at patreon.com/used2sew. Thank you for listening to us here at Used to Sew. We always welcome your additions, corrections, and feedback in general. Please reach out to us via email at usedtosew@gmail.com. Used to Sew is a production of Fox and Raven Media. For more podcasts from Fox and Raven Media, visit our website at foxandravenmedia.com.